This is the worst movie I've ever watched. This movie right here is the worst.
Everyone's going out to see Madame Web.
My do no see. It's all just yelling. It's always yelling. You did this to me.
I have always really loved Marvel movies.
I mean, what % of Marvel movies have you seen?
4%.
4%.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Bad Days. It's the show where your bad days, yeah, you right there, are going to be your best stories one day, eventually, when you're drunk at a party telling them later on. We're living in a bit of a cultural moment right now where movies are getting worse, specifically superhero movies, which is insane because if you see around my studio, you got Captain America's shield, Thor's hammer. I'm wearing a Flash shirt. I really like superhero movies, but studios decided that they're going to take creative control on some of these projects, and that's why last year we got the movie Morbius. And for those of you who weren't on the internet, you missed out on a cultural renaissance that was Morbin time, where they tricked the studio Sony into thinking that people love Morbius and they should put it back into theaters. And obviously they did do that, and then it continued to fail because it was a god-awful, horrible, insane, terrible movie. And in that same vein, they decided to make a movie called Madame Web. Ooh, spooky, but not really. It's based on this character from the comics that's kind of... It's a weird character to adapt to film. In the first place, she was adapted back in this animated series, this old lady, but this time, she's Dakota Johnson. Woo, yay, from 50 Shades of Grey. That's super cool. Everybody's favorite Nepo baby. Love that. Starring alongside Sydney Sweeney in a Spider-Man costume and several other actors who I don't care to name, and Ben from Parks and Recreations, who I do care to name. At least the character he played. I don't know the actor's name. Madame Web came out earlier this week, and the reviews are in, and this movie is terrible according to literally everybody. It sounds like an irredeemably bad time, but I believe there's always a path to redemption. Well, last year, genius YouTuber, my buddy, Mr. Eddy Burback, decided he was going to go see Morbius 5 times in a row to see if it got better with time. You know, some things are just a little bit over your head, and creatively, you got to just keep seeing it to understand the story more. And he thought Morbius was the ticket for that. So he went every single day, 5 times in a row, and the verdict was, you can watch his whole video to see his journey, that the movie didn't get much better. And I think he was missing a variable to his scientific hypothesis of repeated viewings of the movie. And I think I found out what that is, and I'm going to experiment with this movie, Madame Web, that literally everybody in the world hates altogether. I'm going to see how many edibles it takes to make Madame Web a good movie. I live here in the state of Alabama, and the old Mary Jane is quite illegal, but they sell these things called Delta 9 gummies. And here's the deal. It's literally the same thing. It boggles my mind that somehow this is legal and that isn't, because what? It's the same thing, has the same reactions. I'm going to be taking a little dosage of this and steadily increase until we find out how many of these bad boys it takes for me to enjoy Madame Web. Tonight, I'm going to go see the movie with my sobriety firm and intact, just to give a control to make sure we know how I feel about the movie base level, and then I'm determined to figure out how many gummies it's going to take to get me there. I went on the old AMC app to book a showing. It's 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, and you can bet everyone's going out to see Madame Web. Little disclaimer here, I didn't pay to see Madame Web. Back when the Barbie movie was out and in theaters, the line was way too long because it was Barbenheimer and everybody was there, and I needed popcorn and I didn't want to miss a second of Greta Gerwig's goodness. So I paid for AMC stubs, whatever, to skip the line, and it turns out it gives you 3 free movies a week. That's kind of how I did this. I still didn't even want the free AMC app to think I was seeing Madame Web, so I was picking a random movie pretty much every single day and then going into the Madame Web showing.
Jesus Christ. That's a
freaking nightmare, dude. Going down the hallway to see the movie made me really question, is this movie actually incredible and people are just being a hater for no reason? I mean, look at this poster. It's gorgeous. They even have cops walking back and forth, defending the theater so you feel extra safe while watching the cinematic experience.
God, bro. Oh, hell no, bro. What the
That freaking sucked. That has to be one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. There's nobody in the theater, and honestly, it felt like nobody who was in the movie wanted to be in the movie. Let's talk about the plot. Let's get into what's Madame Web really about. So the movie opens up with the Dakota Johnson's mom in the Amazon, where she's studying spiders. You get it? Because Spider-Man. Woo! You immediately get introduced to her bodyguard, a guy named Ezekiel, who's kind of got a horrible energy. He's using an umbrella to shield her from some rain. They're having a weird conversation about these magical spiders that exist in the Amazon that can give you superpowers. And apparently there's this mythical tribe. They have powers because of the spider. Okay, whatever. Oh, would you look at that? Dakota Johnson's mom is pregnant. It looks to be 9 months pregnant, by the way, but for some reason exploring the Amazon looking for a mythical spider. Well, Ezekiel asks her, how soon do you think we'll find the spider? I joined this expedition because you said we were close. To which she said, people have searched for the spider their whole lives. And then Ezekiel walks off back to their campground area, and he starts taking little pictures on a real 2006 spy camera of all of her notes and all of her documents, which are all just, diaries about spiders, woo! And then, I'm not kidding, less than 1 minute later, after saying that it might take years to find the spider, she says, look what I found! I found the spider! And it's a little incredibly CGI looking, very weird looking spider. She says she finds it, and all the other people on the camp are excited, and Ezekiel walks out, boom, bam, bada, bop, boom, pow, kills everybody on the camp except Dakota Johnson's mom, because she's holding the spider, and then they proceed to struggle for it. He's like, I don't want to have to kill you, da, 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 da. And they struggle, and they go back and forth, and you hear, bam, she got shot. The guy takes the spider, he leaves, and then, I'm not kidding, native Spider-Men, spider people, just descend. And they're literally wearing, like, I guess I would describe it as, like, a Native American's take on Spider-Man. I think that could be disrespectful and racist. I don't know how else to describe it. It's literally like a native tribe version of a Spider-Man costume. They descend from the trees, take Dakota Johnson's mom to a cave of which to hold a ceremony. They put her in water, and then they drop one of these magical spiders onto her chest. Boom, bites the middle of her chest, and then the baby is born. They pull the baby out of the water. Dakota Johnson's mom reaches for the baby, and then freaking dies. Cut to 2003, New York City. Dakota Johnson is a paramedic. Her partner, a guy with a little name tag here that says Parker on it. She made sure in the first couple seconds to be like, all right, Ben. Hey there, Ben. Yes, this is Uncle Ben, played by Ben Wyatt from Parks and Recreations. That's her paramedic partner in crime. The cutting to 2003 part really holds no plot significance. They make sure to they first they put a banner, it's 2003, then they have the paramedics truck drive by a Blockbuster, really cementing the fact that this is the olden days. And then we get introduced to our the first of the three younger protagonists of the story. For the life of me, I don't remember this character's name, but she's skateboarding down the street opposite traffic and stops in front of Dakota Johnson's paramedic and proceeds to, like, flip her off. I'm skateboarding on the street you're driving on. Fuck you, paramedics. Supposed to make her look cool and edgy. It makes her look like an asshole. And then we fast forward a little bit. They have somebody in the back of the paramedics van. They get him into the hospital. Apparently it's some little boy's mother, and the little boy walks up to Dakota Johnson with a drawing, and she goes, I don't want that. This guy, Ben Parker here, saved him. And then they're like, just please take the drawing. This is so awkward. During the same scene, we get introduced to our next protagonist, played by Sydney Sweeney. This character's name is Julia. Don't know why that one stuck with me, but it did. And Julia is the stepdaughter of the woman that was in the back of the ambulance. I don't know, real contrived steps to get there. And then they double back to the old paramedic fire station, and Ben Parker said, I'm seeing somebody, and you're like, oh, I wonder who he's seeing. And then he continues to imply Aunt May, because remember, this is a Spider-Man thing. Woo, Spider-Man. Don't you love when your Spider-Man movies have no fucking Spider-Man in it? From there, they get another paramedics call. They go to this bridge, and there's a car flipped over on the bridge. Uncle Ben's in there trying to help out this guy. She's in there trying to talk this guy down. Uncle Ben gets the guy out. Uh-oh, whoopsie-daisy. Dakota Johnson's in the car, falls off the bridge, and she dies. It looks like she dies. There's a really crazy scene with lots of visual effects of spider webs going around her. There's like cracks on the windshield that look like a spider web, and they come out and they grab her. Weird plot contrivance, but she's dead. And then she wakes up, and Uncle Ben is resuscitating her, and she did not die. Turns out he fell in the water in a car, and then he went down and swam and saved her, and she's alive. They don't ever explain how she survived, but she survives. Then he's taking her O2 stats and checking on her health. He says that she needs to go to a real doctor, and then, magic timey-wimey thing happens, and all of a sudden they're having the same conversation again, and she's like,
Ben, chill out. Like, why are we talking about this again? My O2 stat is 89.
And he goes,
No, it's not. Oh, I guess it is.
Whatever. Because her Madam Web powers are activating, and for some reason, Dakota Johnson can see the future. Then we cut to villain guy from before. He's randomly in a tuxedo walking into an opera house, and then he sits next to just a classical MILF, and he seduces her by, there's the playbill for the opera singer, and he's like, here you go. Oh, just kidding, I won't give it to you. And then they smile, hands it back, and then it cuts to her entering his apartment, and she's like, oh, what a crazy apartment. In the center of this crazy insane apartment is like a giant green thing where he has housed the spider he stole from the Amazon years ago. Well, he fucks this woman. In my notes of the movies for that scene I have written, guy who kills mom goes to opera to get bitches. He falls asleep and he dreams of the 3 girls we saw earlier in Spider-Man costumes killing him. And he wakes up in a nightmare scenario, his abs real showing, the man is glistening, and he explains the vision to the woman he just finished boning. She says it's just a dream. He says, no, it's not. I see it every night. It's real life. And this is when this hits me, guys. Every single one of Ezekiel's lines is ADR. They had to
dub over his entire performance.
I have no idea why, because the dubbing is also horrible. He sounds so fucking weird the whole movie. He's like, I don't know. He has a very thick, weird accent from a place you couldn't possibly pinpoint on a map. Well, and then as time goes on, I'm continuing to question why. Why did he sleep with this woman from the opera, if not just to tell her about his nightmare dream? And boom, it's revealed she's an NSA agent, and he needs her NSA technology to track the girls from his dreams. So he paralyzes her, sort of, with a hand, and he says, I'll get rid of the poison if you tell me what the password is. She gives him the password. He kills her. He's got NSA security codes now, and he can track these girls. And then it cuts to him with this assistant that he has for some reason that doesn't get explained. And the assistant's like, I'm going to help you with this, whatever. And then he pulls pictures from his dreams. I guess they're descriptions and art that's been made up. And then she's like, and then I'm going to age them down about 10 years. That is not explained either. And then it's, oh, look, it's young Sydney Sweeney, other girl, and other girl. Hey. I'm also now realizing I forgot to talk about one more girl because it was so unimportant. At some point, Dakota Johnson goes back into her apartment, and she passes a girl, and that is another one of the 3 girls that are really prominent and important in this movie, whose name I do not remember at this point. I'm obviously rewatching this movie several times, so maybe I'll get it on the 4th or 5th go-around. That's about as much plot as I want to talk about now, but safe to say, my review of this movie is I hate it so much. The acting is horrible, the visual effects are whatever, and I cannot believe the villain is ADR'd for the whole movie. You know, earlier in this intro, I was standing and exciting and yay, this is gonna be fun. And then it just hit me. I'm gonna have to put my body through the ringer with the gummies. And on top of all of that, I have to see this movie over and over and over again. And I pray one gummy is enough to make this fun. I hope one gummy is enough to make this an entertaining experience because, oh my God, that was a miserable watch. I'm going to take a 10 milligram gummy tomorrow and then give my review again. And maybe this time it'll be better and we'll dig more into the plot. This is my best friend, Isaiah. He's going to be in charge of me today because, you guys think I wasn't going to take safety precautions when I do this journey of drugs? Legal drugs. Very legal. We're going to go to a store. We'll even show you the store we go buy them from. Real extra legal stuff. But yeah, he's going to be driving me to and fro, and then for the rest of the time of these videos, he'll be the keeper of the gummies. All right, there it is, a legal-looking establishment next to a bloody Walmart. Can't get more legal-looking than that. So we've left the Vape Escape, got a little bag of magical goodies. The man there was real adamant to explain us, I mean, every little detail because, you know, that's how it is. And yeah, more updates to come. Making sure we're being real safe on this edible experience. I hadn't eaten that morning, so made sure to get a little grub in. Got some Zaxby's chicken tenders in the parking lot right before we put the gummy down the hatch to get in there and go see some Madam Web. Did you see the bucket?
Did I see the bucket?
The Dune popcorn bucket?
Oh, I saw the bucket already.
What did it make you think?
Wood.
Wood?
God, bro. Oh, hell no, bro.
So your thoughts on Madam Web?
That was ass.
So, I think the verdict is that 10 milligrams really is not enough to make that even a watchable experience. I think it was even more apparent
how like crazy the movie is. Like the concept is really crazy. The camera movements don't make sense. I think being in this state of mind really had me dialed in on how the camera kept like jutting in and out for no reason. Kind of like in The Office where they're doing the like, it's like mockumentary style, but it's not that, but it is that. That was a horrible movie.
Just now returning from the theater, watching Madam Web just a little high. The movie wasn't better. I did pick up on quite a bit more camera choreography. It felt like at times I was watching a mockumentary like The Office or Parks and Rec. The camera would just kind of like zoom in and zoom out. Really weird. Sounds got a little louder. Not gonna lie, a little shaky. Also, I went during the day, and there were a ton of kids at this showing. It kind of got me thinking, like, these kids, their parents are like, oh, we're taking them to a Spider-Man movie. It's gonna be like Across the Spider-Verse or Into the Spider-Verse or even Spider-Man No Way Home. And instead it's this, like, honestly kind of dark, gratuitously violent film with very little comedy or levity. I honest to God, think this has to be the least child-friendly Marvel adjacent movie I think I've ever seen. I think Morbius on some level is more of a child-friendly movie than this movie. But let's pick up where we left off on summarizing the plot of this insane movie. So we cut from the guy's apartment where he is murdering the opera MILF CIA agent, and we're back to Dakota Johnson, and we immediately get a Pepsi ad, which, like, it's kind of funny. It's not necessarily the biggest detail to harp on, but Sony is, like, heavy-handed as all hell in their product placement. They give her, like, a blue can of Pepsi that is the brightest blue you've ever seen. There's some dialogue exchanged, yada, 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 and she goes to, like, a grilling out party with Ben Parker and all of their coworkers, and inside the house is a baby shower for Ben's sister-in-law, a.k.a. Mary Parker. What? Mary Parker? Isn't that? Yep, you're right. That's the mother of Spider-Man. For those of you who aren't comic book geeks, Mary and Richard Parker are Peter Parker's parents. Yay, look, they're all here, all the characters, and she's pregnant. So Peter Parker's about to pop out I was going to say pin it because it was alliteration, but any minute now. Whoa, crazy. Dakota Johnson's character gets roped in to having to join in on this baby shower. But it's so awkward and uncomfortable, and why would you ever do that? Like, a baby shower feels like real intimate moment. Let's have friends, family, teachers that have great relations, and mentors, guidance people, anything other than this strange woman who is a coworker of your sister-in-law. They have her sit down, they make her join in this, and they're like, we're playing games, ooh, we're gonna play games. She's pulling out slips of paper, and she's like, ooh, my mom always used to cut the crusts from my sandwiches for me. Danielle, is that you? And then she pulls out a blank folded piece of paper and she goes, who did this? Who would have done such a thing? And it's like almost like a real awkward moment. And it's like Dakota Johnson's like, oh, I did it, sorry. And then everyone's like, you have to have at least one fond memory with your mother, which is so weird. Like, I can't. It's such an uncomfortable thing. It's so funny to me now, but it's such an uncomfortable thing. She's like, oh, you don't have a relationship with your mom? And she's like, my mom's dead. She died in labor giving birth. And she's like pointing at Emma Roberts, who's pregnant Peter Parker's mom. And she goes, not that dying in pregnancy is common. And the thing is, this could have been played for laughs, and it just isn't. You could have had reaction shots from the people in the room that don't make your skin crawl, but they wanted you to feel like, for some reason, Dakota Johnson's character, Cassie Webb here, is just like incredibly socially awkward, and it doesn't lend itself to the rest of the film or the greater message. It's just something they really wanted to hammer home. We get another moment of they're playing a game. She seems to be reliving an event here where they're like, oh, the baby's name is going to be, and then a balloon pops, so you don't get to hear it, but obviously she was going to say Peter Parker, which they never say throughout the rest of the film, by the way. They don't ever say it, and I'm so tired of that, like, ooh, superhero movie Easter eggs. We don't have the rights, so we're always going to imply said characters. They've been doing that since Christopher Nolan's Batman movies and since Marvel's been split between Fox and Sony. It's so annoying. Also, I'm going to take a second here, and let's talk about why this movie was made. Like, what's the thought process behind it? Because it's kind of a ridiculous film. It's made because Sony still owns the rights to Spider-Man and all of Spider-Man's villains. They licensed it out to Marvel, aka the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's why Tom Holland plays Spider-Man in those movies. So I think something about that contract maybe limits the kind of Spider-Man they can use on screen. So that's why you've gotten Venom 1 and 2, Morbius, Madam Web, and there's a Craven movie, none of which have anything to do with Spider-Man, but are all Spider-Man's greatest villains. It's just Sony doing whatever they can to kind of cash grab off of this. Dakota Johnson, throughout this press tour, has quite a few interesting little moments.
I have always really loved Marvel movies.
I mean, what percent of Marvel movies have you seen?
4%.
4%.
Her acting kind of paints a picture of a person who doesn't want to be in the project they're in. I don't think of Dakota Johnson as a very untalented person, but this movie was starring the most untalented actress I think I've ever watched in my life. All of them, it was devoid of talent and understanding and entertainment and happiness and joy. It's life-sucking and soul-sucking. Dakota Johnson very clearly didn't want to be in this movie based on her performance, and then through some tabloid sleuthing, I found out that she actually fired her agent after the movie came out. Here's my little theory. In interviews, it aggressively sounds like she thinks she's joining the MCU, as in like like Avengers and Iron Man and Black Widow, if that's your movie. Captain Marvel, woo! Yeah, she thinks she's joining that, when really she's joining Venom and Morbius, and I don't think she understood that, which is like a whole other conversation that kind of irritates me, but I think I'm an average consumer who's really into comic book media, so I feel obligated to know the difference between like X-Men and Fantastic Four owned by Fox, but they're still Marvel, and Sony owns Spider-Man, but it's still Marvel, and now blah blah blah. I understand that. I guess I've always thought ever since the MCU came into like real prominence in society that everyone kind of got it, but I think actors might be the exception to the rule because they don't really care about this media other than being in it. And then there's my other question. I know I'm so scatterbrained right now, and I'm sure this is going to be an absolute bitch for my editor to edit. Oh my god, these actors are like really rich people. Like Dakota Johnson probably made millions and millions of dollars off 50 Shades of Grey. That's like $1 billion movie franchise. Adam Scott is here as Ben Parker. He's also like an incredibly beloved, talented actor. Sydney Sweeney just had one of the most popular rom-coms of the year come out with Glenn Powell. She's got some weird nun movie coming out soon. She's like constantly in the media circus. Why did they do this movie? Why did their agents and managers not know that this is a Sony movie? Like, why doesn't Hollywood understand that like society doesn't want these movies? They suck. Let's get back to the plot. I'm losing the thread here. So party gets interrupted while Dakota Johnson's continuing to be awkward, and it's old Ben Parker saying, hey, there's a fire down at the docks, we gotta go. So they race off to the docks, and we're having a moment. We pick up with Dakota Johnson giving chest compressions, which is a very important part of the story. Ben Parker's rolling on by with another patient, and she goes, hey, did you check his abdomen? And she goes, oh, hey, good catch, he's got internal bleeding. They keep driving by, and she's having these weird visions where her hands are covered in blood, and there's a car accident, all these other things are happening. The whole point of this moment is to show you her powers. So she envisions that one of her coworkers is going to get into this ambulance truck over there, drive 10 feet, and then die. She tries to convince him not to go, which effectively creates the moment where this happens. Then he drives down the street, he gets killed, she gives him chest compressions, but he's dead, which, greater question here. If somebody gets hit by a car and they have shrapnel all over them, are you supposed to give chest compression? Is that what you do next? I don't know. It looked real odd. And then like, hey, you can't do anything about it. He's dead. He's gone. Dakota Johnson goes to see an optometrist, and the optometrist, for some reason, the doctor who gives you glasses is like, your MRI scans seem clear. This thing is this. It's clearly just PTSD. You're a fucking optometrist. You give people prescriptions for glasses. You're not qualified enough for this greater in-depth medical analysis. She's like, you just go home, take a week off of work, and watch old movies. And this is where it gets so fucking weird to me. Cut to Dakota Johnson's apartment, and the old movie she chose to watch. This is the middle of summer. Every scene is clearly, it's New York City, it's warm outside, everybody's wearing fucking t-shirt and jeans and shorts, and Dakota Johnson goes home to watch an old movie. She watches A Christmas Carol, like the olden days Scrooge movie. She's watching that. That's her comfort movie. I guess the idea is that he's got dialogue in that movie. It's like, oh, is this the future, or is it what could be the future? Can I change it? But I feel like you could have used, I don't know, Back to the Future or any Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day would be a really fucking good one to use here. But no, they used A Christmas Carol in July. Well, immediately we have her getting on a train to Poughkeepsie to go to the guy's funeral who just died minutes earlier, and we're getting Groundhog Day audios. I know I just brought it up a second ago, but the kind of audio that only comes when it's like, New York City's real crazy around here. One-off lines that are so insane that if you watch enough TV and movies like where they do this trope, you know it's so that you can realize what's happening before the character does. I watched this in IMAX last night and regular today, and oh my god, it's like the first Spider-Man movie is directed by Sam Raimi, who's traditionally a horror director, so he had some pretty horrifying moments in that movie. This is that times 1,000, not because of the visual gag, but because of the audio. Whenever something scary would happen, she'd have a vision of someone getting killed. The audio is just like, rah, rah, like fucking screaming at you for no fucking reason. And it's terrifying. It's not, the scene isn't inherently terrifying, but you're like quaking in your boots a little bit because the movie theater just screamed at you. So she's on this train, scary jump scare noises are happening. She keeps envisioning Ezekiel in his evil Spider-Man costume killing these girls that we bumped into these girls earlier, and for some reason they're also all on this train. This is not explained other than they're all magically tied together through the web of life. I guess they don't really address this, but they're all on the train together because fate wants them to be. She keeps having visions, Dakota Johnson having visions of the 3 girls getting killed by Ezekiel in an evil Spider-Man costume. She gets up, starts screaming, "You guys gotta go with me, let's go, let's get out of here," and she starts trying to get them off the train while Ezekiel is continuing to charge at them. You can see him through the windows, and it's revealed that he's wearing a suit but no shoes, and this is never addressed. Every other time we see him in a suit, he is wearing shoes. When he's in a Spider-Man costume, he is wearing shoes. But for some reason, and I know you guys are like, this is a weird nitpick, why isn't he wearing shoes? This was clearly like a decision by directors and people and writers. Like, okay, whatever. There is literally no explanation for what his motivations are. I have no clue why this guy is the bad guy of this movie. He shows up pretending to be the security guard, kills Dakota Johnson's mom to steal the spider, but we don't know why he wants the spider. Like, oh, he just wants power. Cut to New York several years later. Now he's hunting these girls because he keeps having dreams of them and he knows they're gonna kill them. He's also like a multi-millionaire with access and power and credentials. Like, I know he has Spider-Man powers now, but I don't think that magically makes you a millionaire. Like, there is nothing else told about this character. And then back to his Spider-Man costume. It looks like a cheap cosplay of a kid who's like, I want to be Spider-Man, but edgier. It's so ugly and doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of reasons for why Spider-Man's costume looks the way it does in the comic. Originally, it was that Peter Parker modeled his costume after this luchador, this Mexican fighter that he saw a poster of one time. Then in like the Spider-Man Homecoming movies, the Tom Holland movies, you got a reason that like the goggles are the shape they are because they're basically camera lenses that lower the amount of stimuli coming in because his spider senses really have him amped up. This guy just has his costume because he thinks his costume is fucking cool and no other reason. There is no explanation given. He just has this costume. Okay, cool, whatever. While they're running away from this guy, trying to exit the train station, for some reason, the police are after Dakota Johnson. They literally just stop her and start arresting her. No explanation as to why. They're like, you're kidnapping these little girls, but the girls aren't. They're not little, by the way. They're adult women, all of them, but they're clearly not being kidnapped. But whatever, they're all, the police try and arrest her. Don't worry, evil Spider-Man's here to kill the police first. Like, it feels like it would have been very easy to kill Dakota Johnson and kill his lifelong nemesis enemies first, but instead, he kills the police officers. And then finally, you have them exit the subway, and there's a cab driver outside of his car for some reason, thanking a patron of riding in his car, receiving the money by hand. They steal his car, and they zip off into the woods. Yes, you're like, wait, I thought the movie took place in New York City. It does, but somehow, some way, they just drove a little while away and went to the woods. I think it's safe to say this tiny little gummy didn't do much at making this movie better. I think I honestly just noticed more of the flaws, but I think that honestly, if we just dial up the dosage, maybe I could get more out of it. So tomorrow, I'm doubling the dosage of the edible, and we're gonna go see Madam Web one more time.
So, what's wrong?
Hello there. Welcome to Madam Web Day 3. This day went differently because mi amigo here decided to give me the wrong edible. But I'm a goddamn trooper, and I said I was going to go and see this movie till it's good, and I meant it, so I saw the movie again. And this time, it was worse. It was so much worse than it was before. I don't think the edibles are making Madam Web better. I think that they're making me worse. They're making my mind fall into itself. Parts of the movie were much quicker this time. and other parts were much, much slower. So it did even out to be the full 2 hours. Once again, for the third time, I've now seen Madam Web 3 times. That's 3 more times than any human being on the planet should ever consider seeing such a goddamn dumb movie. I'm sure I'm gonna explain this in a better way later, but I'm on a lot of edible. I've had a lot of edible. But just like the last couple days, let's keep getting into this plot together. We pick up with the Madam Web crew, the Web Warriors, if you will, driving from a cab to the woods. Because when you're in the middle of downtown Manhattan, you often just take on the next exit and another left. And look at that. You're in the middle of the woods. Dakota Johnson's character, they have their connecting tissue moment. Oh, reveal. You're the girl in my building. You're the girl whose stepmom I saved in an ambulance. You're the girl who flicked me off. Oh my God, we're connected. We're the web of life, whatever, weaving. And they continue to have that dialogue. And then Madam Web decides, I'm going to go home and do some sleuthing. It'll take me 3 hours. So she leaves the teenagers, who are all grown adults, by the way. I'm real, I know we learn. We did Stranger Things, big hit. Getting younger kids to play young characters, good idea. Sydney Sweeney is pushing 30. I think of her, I think of an old lady, an old gal at this point. She's literally playing this character who's like, guys, I don't know if we should do that. Ooh. I wrote in my notes, Sydney Sweeney, meek and pitiful. At one point during the sequence, we get somebody say, spider person, crawl, in reference to the bad guy, because they can't say Spider-Man in a Spider-Man movie, right? You can't reference Spider-Man in a Spider-Man movie. And then you have continued, I wrote worst writing ever, so more bad dialogue, and then I wrote wall crawling Dakota Johnson comedy scene is trash. There's a scene where she's like, you don't know if you can climb unless you try, and then she fails at wall crawling. There's this bonding scene. A lot of people have been saying that this movie, the strongest point of this movie, is the 3 younger girls' chemistry. I'd firmly disagree. They have this bonding scene where they're all kind of talking about their past, but some grandiose assumptions are being made. Like, the one girl just looks at this other girl who's just super annoying, and she's like, I bet your parents are rich. It's like, what has she done to allude to that being the truth about her? And then Sydney Sweeney's character's like, yeah, my mom's out of the picture. And they're like, she abandoned you. There's a lot of intense assumptions of people you're just meeting. From there, you have the trio going through the woods to a diner where they're very excited about eating some food, and in the middle of their meal, where they're like, let's be super quiet and let's be really careful when we're in this restaurant, in the middle of their meal, they look to the left and see a bunch of, these guys actually look like they're in high school boys, giggling at a table, and you catch Sydney Sweeney's character making little googly eyes at them, trying to flirt. And it's really weird. It's weird because Sydney Sweeney and these other actresses, to me, very, very adult, are getting visibly horny. I think I'm underselling how weird this scene is, because you go from the weird flirting to one of them being like, let's go talk to these guys. All of the sudden, all 3 of them are dancing on a table to Britney Spears' Toxic. And not just they literally kick the food off the table. They're at a restaurant, they're in a diner, and they just get on the table and they start dancing. And it's super weird and sexual, very sexual for some reason. And then Dakota Johnson goes back up and lectures them. Ooh, bad guy's here. He kills them. Ooh, turns out it was one of Dakota Johnson's visions. She hits the bad guy with a car, and she picks up all the kids, and then they go to the motel, and then Sydney Sweeney happens. So they're laying low at this bar, right? They're laying low. They're not talking to anybody until they get horny for the horny boys. But there's an older gentleman at the bar next to them that calls the police. You don't really get to hear the dialogue, but that's why evil bad guy knows where they're at and tracks them down in the diner. Insane. You're just like, 3 girls are here. Hey, 911. The kidnap victims seem to happily be with no scratches, aches, or burns at a diner, having snacks and flirting with some boys. Uh-oh. They must be the kidnap victims. And then you have a dub villain guy being like, 404 911 11 calls. I will be there soon as possible. I don't know what the fuck kind of accent he has. What the hell is that? He lies to the police, puts into the dispatch office that he's gonna answer the call. They're not the missing persons. To me, it was so weird that the random guy sitting there called the cops over. It's such a plot contrivance. Pretty dope sequence of hitting the bad guy with the car. I thought it was just well designed. The special effects as well as the VFX all looked really good. The next thing I wrote was, her name is Web, like a spider, get it? The last scene I can stomach talking about at this point, because if you can't tell, I've had a little bit, the edible was too much. I'm just about out of energy at this point. But the last thing I want to talk about is the CPR scene. So there's a scene where Dakota Johnson's character is now teaching Sydney Sweeney, other girl CPR. And it is the most overtly sexual scene of this whole movie. They're literally like taking turns, and it's not the position you would do CPR in. They're literally just like, am I doing it right? And then they're turning, and then they're like, okay, take over for me. And then the camera angles are like, you're seeing Sydney Sweeney's head go, why? Oh my God. Look at this man, stone cold sober, making the same face. He's cringing. He is cringing also. He said they were making those noises. Bro, it's insane. Why the fuck would they do that? It's just like I get it. You got Sydney Sweeney, you got Dakota Johnson. What are they known for? 50 Shades of Grey and Big Boobs Euphoria. Yay, what do we get them together? Let's make them sexually overt. Cool. Make that movie. Don't try and make it in the guise of like a pseudo-children Spider-Man adjacent film. There's no reason, by the way, for these three protagonist character girls to be in high school, which they keep bringing up the fact that they're minors. They bring up that they're minors multiple times. I think the story, for all of its failures, still works if they're fucking adults, if they're in college or something. But instead, you add this very weird dynamic where they're constantly like, but I'm a minor. But I'm a minor. Why? What the fuck are they thinking? Sony, if you wanted to make a Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, wet t-shirt contest movie, which also happens later during this movie, yes, there is a scene with a wet Sydney Sweeney holding a soaking wet Dakota Johnson and some Sony executive, probably you, Avi Arad, for those of you who don't know. Avi Arad was the Spider-Man executive who fucking ruined Spider-Man. He's an old, boring white fogey who can't, I don't even know if that's really a word people use anymore. He sucks. Avi Arad sucks. He's the reason that in the MCU, that Spider-Man doesn't have an Uncle Ben. Why? Because he said, the reason people didn't like my former movies is because Uncle Ben was in them. What? No one fucking ever said that. So here's the reason. If you're like, why do Spider-Man movies always seem to miss certain giant characters and story beats? It's because Avi Arad. He hates women, he hates Spider-Man, and he's an old fucking hack. I don't know if this is going to make the video, or maybe this will be in the Patreon cut or the bloopers for afterward. But I have a lot of thoughts on Avi Arad. That's as much Madam Web as I can stomach talking about on this fine day. I'm very tired. I'm calling it a night. I will see the movie again, and hopefully it'll be good. I don't know. I'm very tired.
So, yesterday, had a bit of a mishap, but I'm committed. I'm committed to finding out how many of these bad boys it takes to make Madam Web good. So I'm back at the movie theater. I'm gonna pop one of these. My theater showing is at 2:30, and it's 2:37. But you're like, why aren't you rushing inside? Well, because I've gone to this movie so many times, I know that there are 29 minutes exactly of commercials beforehand. So we got a little bit of time. Pop this. Let it do its magic, and then get back into it. I gotta say, I am tired of this video idea. I am mentally exhausted. It's windy, but like warm and nice. It's been freezing cold, and I kind of just want to be out in the world. I don't want to be in a 15-year-old theater watching Madam Web, because to be frank, I hate Madam Web.
Going into this show in a Madam Web, morale was real high.
There's nobody working scanning, so I didn't have to pay for anything this time. Every time I see it, I want it more and more. And you know what? I deserve some joy. Something for having to see this movie so many goddamn times. I'm buying myself the Dune popcorn bucket. The Dune popcorn buckets?
Yeah. Anything else?
Nope.
And powerful, because here they are. AMC Theaters. We make movies better.
My hand got stuck.
God, bro. Oh, hell no, bro.
Today was day 4 of watching Madam Web on higher edibles until the movie is good. And guess what, guys? 35 milligrams of edibles, it doesn't make the movie better. It doesn't make the movie any better. It makes the movie worse. Noises are louder, and this movie is nothing but a bunch of loud noises and torture. I picked up on some more jokes I don't like this one joke in the beginning where they're whipping around in the ambulance and Uncle Ben talks about how he was in the army, to which Dakota Johnson said, well, now you're in Queens. You ever been shot at in Queens? In reference to later in the future of his life when Uncle Ben, in one of the saddest moments in comic book history, gets brutally shot in daylight in Queens. The main things I think that I was getting out of this showing and on this dosage, the movie's sound design is absurd. Like, it is a horror movie with screaming audio. I've seen it twice in IMAX and once regular. IMAX is dialed up to a whole other level of that. Today I was in an empty IMAX theater watching it.
Here, but me and my Dunusi to watch Madam Web. Woo! This is the worst movie I've ever watched. This movie right here is the worst I have ever watched in my life.
Get up.
And the
Get
audio
off.
is like,
Get
it's
up.
like a jump
Me?
scare. It's
No.
all just
Get up.
yelling.
You're gonna
It's
die.
always
Get
yelling.
up.
But let's just get back into the plot. So, girls were at a motel somewhere learning sexual CPR from Dakota Johnson, 50 Shades of Grey star. Wonderful, amazing, which, by the way, in that scene, they take a moment to talk about how important it is to never stop. Don't stop chest compressions, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Well, if you go back to an earlier moment in the movie, she does stop this. We see Dakota Johnson's character stop chest compressions, say something to Adam Scott's character about another patient, and then continue chest compressions after, which goes against this very important, the most important rule that she had to teach these girls. So we pick up, sexual CPR is done, and Uncle Ben is back. He's taking the kids to the house with Mary Parker, mother of Peter Parker, Emma Roberts, and they're going to go do their thing while Dakota Johnson's going to go find answers. So up until this point in the movie, they're laying super low because there's cops after them. So there's a scene where Dakota Johnson, who is driving around in a stolen cab, takes a screwdriver and pretty badass just pops the tag off the back. That way the cops can't know who it is. But it's a fucking cab, so there's a sign on top as well as paint and shit on the sides that are like, this is cab number X blank 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 blank. So that's stupid. But again, she's trying to fly super under the radar. To our knowledge, this Dakota Johnson is not a wealthy character. She's not shown herself to be from money, but all of the sudden, she says, I need to go find answers. I need to go back to where mom died. She goes to Peru to go to the Amazon. She fucking just gets on a plane and then a bus, and then she appears in Peru. How does she get to the airport? Like, there's a manhunt for her, apparently. Like, people have been looking for her. But no, in a post-9/11 America, Madam Web, not just post-9/11, by the way, a couple years after 9/11, leaving New York City. What was it? Like, barely a week after 9/11, wanted criminal gets on a plane, goes to the Amazon. When she gets there, we get to revisit our favorite character. Instead of Spider-Man's origins being about how he created this cool suit while looking at a luchador, yada, 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 oh no, it's the indigenous spider people from the beginning of the movie. And we get to pick up, but this time, he's not his indigenous spider garb. This indigenous man, who's very much just a white dude with a beard, just some white guy speaking in a perfect American accent, hanging out in the woods in the Amazon. Which, by the way, I don't remember what the word is that they use in the film, but it's just spider in Spanish. Like, it's not like a special phrase, what they call these superhuman people who have the magical spiders and wear red and webs around them, which is so dumb, by the way, to add, like, an indigenous reason for why Peter Parker, kid who grew up in New York, ends up becoming Spider-Man. Whatever. We get to go back there, and instead of him being in his indigenous tribal Spider Boy uniform, it's just a regular white guy with a perfect American accent. He takes good old Dakota Johnson down into the Cave of Wonders and gives her an astral projection dream, where she gets to relive, and we get to find out that her mom was in the Amazon, not because she doesn't care about Dakota Johnson, but because she was gonna be a baby with a birth defect that was gonna die really quickly, and she didn't want that to happen. So somehow she funded an expedition. She got a security guard who was secretly evil to help her find magical spiders to cure her daughter's illness. And that's the mom's real origin story. Dakota Johnson realizes she was already loved, and now armed with the knowledge of this and the fact that she could maybe see the future. Ooh, he doesn't really train her or explain anything to her, just that is a power that you have. For some reason, you don't have the wall crawling or the web shooting or the super strength or anything anything valuable, but you can see in the future. So we get that scene. And again, I think the absurdity of this character that is made to be like a tribesman living in the middle of the Amazon in Peru is just some perfect English-speaking white dude is just comical and ridiculous and stupid in so many different ways. But here's the most egregious thing that this guy does. The most egregious thing he does is look at the camera and look at Dakota Johnson and say the words, "If you take on the responsibility, great power will come." Are you fucking serious? If you take on the responsibility, great power will come. A play on the famous comic book line, with great power comes great responsibility, or the other one, when you have great power, there must come great responsibility. But what it's not, like this doesn't even have the same meaning. If you take on the responsibility, great power will come. No, it's if you have the power, you're held to a higher standard and you must take on the responsibility of taking care of others. Not, well, if you're real good to people, you'll get superpowers, or if you take care of people, you get superpowers. That's not the message. It's not the fucking message. The message of the Spider-Man franchise gets bludgeoned in this scene. And as like a comic book fan, as a movie fan, as a fan of the 90s cartoon where Madam Web was first animated and introduced into media, this is so fucking dumb. But I digress. Then we cut back to Uncle Ben, who's now raising a whole bunch of teenage girls bouncing around, whatever, and then Mary Parker, played by Emma Roberts, is given birth, and Peter Parker's on his way. They do not say Peter Parker. I can't stress that. This is a Spider-Man movie devoid of the ability to make Spider-Man references. Really think about that for a second. This is a Spider-Man movie devoid of the ability to make Spider-Man references. Is that not insane? You should be able to reference the titular character that all these other characters are essentially like D-rank offshoots of. It's so dumb. But they don't say his name, just that Mary Parker's water's broken. They got to get to the hospital. But you know what, guys? That's as much Madam Web as I can stomach today. I won't lie to you guys. I walked out before the finale. I walked out. I left the theater before the finale. Don't hate me. Don't be mad at me. I got real flustered and overwhelmed by the loud noises and my state of mind. And, yeah, I desperately need a nap. So, goodbye. See you tomorrow. Next Madam Web Day. Goodbye. Well, guys, over this little journey, you've seen me suffer quite a bit. And I hate to break it to you, that suffering ends today. I woke up this morning, fully intending to go see Madam Web again, take a higher dosage of edible, but I just started crying, and I didn't want to do it. I can't imagine this movie is ever going to get better. No amount of drugs makes something so awful any better. This is horrible. This is just plain horrible. So let's get into that at some point, but let me finish telling you the rest of the journey. We pick up with Dakota Johnson's Madam Web back from the Peruvian Amazon, where she has been hanging out with the indigenous spider people, the people from the beginning of the movie who painted themselves red and wrapped themselves in wooden sticks to replicate Spider-Man's costume. Those people. Well, she's back in New York, but oh no, she can't find Uncle Ben and the kids and Mary Parker. Why? Because they're in a car headed to the hospital because Mary Parker said, "Baby boy's coming." Who's baby boy? Peter Parker, but we can't reference him. So baby boy's coming. They're in the car. They're driving off. They're all wearing hoodie. They have this like dark clandestine scene in the driveway where their hoodies are up so you can't see their face. Of course, while driving, ATM nearby does catch one of their faces, and then just like that, Villain's assistant says, Mr. Villain Man, you gotta go catch those spider women. So he goes off to go chase after them. Dakota Johnson steals an ambulance, like an actively being used to save somebody ambulance. It's never explained how she gets a hold of it. She sees it driving, parked to go get somebody, I imagine in need of emergency care, and then she steals the car and drives off. You pick back up with evil Spider-Man is now on top of the car in some crazy New York intersection, about to kill Uncle Ben, Mary Parker, and these three girls, and then boom, Dakota Johnson flies through a billboard in an ambulance and hits him with a car. And then begins this sequence. Guys, some of the CGI is kind of fine. It's passable, but it does not serve the narrative. They have yet to do anything to reinforce this guy's motivation other than he needs to kill these girls because these girls kill him in the future due to visions he's been seeing since he stole the spider to get himself magical powers. But we don't know know why he wanted to steal the spider to get magical powers. He has no intention beyond the motivation to kill these girls. It's very, very stupid and lackluster. In my opinion, it just gets kind of ridiculous. So evil Spider-Man's been hit by a car, but he's fine. He stands up in the middle of fire. Dakota Johnson said,
Uncle Ben, just go take Mary to the hospital. Let her have her Peter Parker Spider-Man baby. I'm going to go. It'll all be okay. You didn't ask for this.
and he goes, well, neither did you, because he's Adam Scott, and he's actually such a good actor in such a horrible film. Well, we continue with our Spider Girls, and she finds this abandoned building, and now, Dakota Johnson, post Amazon, middle of the woods, fountain water vision time, she can control her powers, and you're getting to watch her show off a little bit. She at some point tells one of the girls to charge up the AED, and then evil Spider-Man jumps on the car. Don't worry, the girl puts the AED against the ceiling and shocks evil Spider-Man. Super cool. Whoa, and then the girl has a line, you're showing off, and she goes, not yet. Maybe a little. I don't want to be mean. You had your moment where you put Ellen in her place, and we appreciate you for that. We don't like Ellen, but I don't think we like you either. This was a real horrible moment. Well, now we're in some weird factory area making fireworks. It's a building that apparently needs to be torn down because it's structurally not sound, but is housing lots of fireworks. Cool. I don't live in New York City. Maybe that's a thing in Queens. I'm not sure. Well, we continue as Madam Web is showing off her superpowers as a set piece. A lot of visuals that we had premonitions of earlier, like she in her visions, you saw the letter S from this giant Pepsi logo. Yes, they're fighting in a Pepsi warehouse. Product placement, once again, Sony's real subtle, real great with that. This is an end of movie, beam in the sky, end scene that is just entirely inconsequential. Madam Web falls in the water at the end. She's looking up as she's drowning, and then a bottle rocket flies in and burns her retinas, which, OMG, is this how they're going to blind her to make her more like comic book Madam Web? That's really what I wanted, comic book Madam Web. I've been waiting my whole life to see a comic book Madam Web movie. No the fuck I haven't. No the fuck no one has. Why the fuck would anybody want that? That's dumb. That's a stupid thing. Nobody wants this. Nobody wanted this. Nobody needed this. I don't need this. I don't need this in my life, man. I used to work. I was a realtor. I had a real job, and now I sit here and I talk to this camera about Madam Web, and it's driving me insane. So I needed to take a minute. I'm okay now. So Madam Web is blind now. Good old Sydney Sweeney dives in the water, scoops her out, and there we have, I think, the pitch for this movie. A soaking wet Sydney Sweeney and Dakota Johnson just kind of sitting there. And you know what they do? They bring back around the most important part of the movie, sexual CPR. Yes, we get the girls using the CPR that good old Dakota Johnson, Madam Web, taught them earlier to save her life. So we cut to the hospital where Mary Parker's birthing out Peter Parker. Good old Peter's born. We don't say his name because we can't do that. This is a Spider-Man movie. Why could we could never say Peter Parker's name out loud. Good old Adam Scott, Ben Parker's there saying hello to his new little nephew. In the other room is Dakota Johnson recovering. She is now blind. She reaches out to grab the girl's hands because they've bonded and they're a family now. And she's like, I knew you'd be there. I can see everything. They cut to a little bit in the future where she is now wheelchair bound, staring out a pretty ornate, beautiful window. This definitely isn't the apartment that she was living in at the beginning of the movie. They don't explain how she has money or anything of the sort, but she is now blind, or maybe not blind, but wearing insane, stupid glasses and wheelchair bound. Well, the three girls walk in with a little bit of takeout for her, some Chinese food, and they're like, hey, we got Chinese food. And she goes, I know. And then at some point she goes, bless you, Anya. And then Anya sneezes. She goes, oh, thank you, because now she sees the future, and that's her whole gimmick. And you get to see another little future sight moment of them all in the Spider-Woman costumes, along with a floating Madam Web also in her own costume. We have one of the girls say, oh yeah, Ben's loving being uncle, all the fun and none of the responsibility. And then she's like, or so he thinks, which is, in reference to how Mary Parker and Richard Parker are going to brutally die at some point, and then he will have to take on Peter Parker to only die later himself. How wonderful. Wonderfully silly little joke to end the movie on. And that's it. That's Madam Web. That's the plot. That's the film that America was waiting for, and now we finally have. I'm kidding. It's such a horrible movie. It's such a horrible movie. In fact, I hear from headlines, this video has taken a while to make, so we've gotten to see more news about Madam Web come out throughout this. People still hate it, and apparently Disney is more interested than ever in buying Spider-Man rights, which would be a multi-billion-dollar acquisition from Sony, because at the beginning of Madam Web, the Marvel logo plays. It's a different Marvel logo, but it says in association with Marvel. If you're an average everyday viewer, you're probably going to assume this is part of the MCU. Forget about being an average everyday viewer, both Matt Smith and Dakota Johnson's agents lied to them and said they were joining the MCU when they signed on to this project. So I think Marvel's looking to not have their brand diluted more, because this movie and Morbius before it were truly, truly horrendous. It is, I mean, it's just sacrilegious and disgusting and horrible that this movie continues to exist. I hated it so much. I'm a giggly high guy. I like to laugh and get all silly when I'm high, but you could tell I didn't enjoy this video. I didn't enjoy making it, not for 1 second. This is all pain. Terrible, terrible movie that I don't think anybody should go see. I don't know if I should ever put my body through a video like this again, but if you guys enjoy it, comment down below. I'll give this idea maybe another go. Well, guys, that's it. That's Madam Web. I'm Hassan. Now you know how many edibles it takes to make Madam Web good. Infinite. Take as many edibles as it takes to kill you, and then that's the answer to how many edibles it takes to make Madam Web good. Because if you're dead, you can't watch it anymore. Therefore, it's good. That's how I feel about it. Your bad days are your best stories. Like, this whole video was some of the worst days of my life filming this, and I guess if you guys enjoyed it, it's your best story. So, haha, there you go. There's my branding there. Bye, guys. Bad days, best stories. I'm Hassan. That's Isaiah. He sits on the couch back there sometimes. Goodbye. That's the end of the video. Bye, 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 bye.